Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, President Biden's vaccine mandate for larger businesses came one step closer to reality and one step closer to big legal challenges. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, submitted the initial text of the Biden national vaccine mandate to the White House for review, what is called the Emergency Temporary Standard from OSHA. Once the Biden administration signs off on it, it will take effect immediately, and then the lawsuits will quickly roll in. Last month, the president announced businesses with more than 100 employees will be required to mandate vaccines or administer weekly tests. Now, almost all of the legal analysts and constitutional scholars are acting like this is a legal no-brainer, that, of course, this is going to survive legal challenges.
OSHA does have the ability to require businesses, especially large companies, to put in place safety regulations, things that will protect the health and security of the people who work there.
I don't think it's a huge step to say that OSHA uses its authority over workplaces, which is well established, to meet a new threat.
Are there any other court cases similar that sets precedent for what is actually happening right now?
Yeah, there are several cases, and the original one goes all the way back to 1905 in Jacobson versus Massachusetts. In that case, the United States Supreme Court said, yes, you can mandate a vaccine, even though it may push on those personal liberties.
This appears to be legal because what the law says, look, this is going to be temporary.
All right, here in our show, we're going to take the politics out of it and go straight to the legal questions. Before I dive in, let me be very clear. I am pro-vaccine. I believe in the vaccine's effectiveness, and I believe the country would be better off from a public health standpoint if everyone got it. But my take as a legal matter is that this is far from a slam dunk. Where the administration is on safe ground, it seems to me, is with regard to mandating government employees and even hospital workers where there's federal funding to the hospitals. But when it comes to mandating every company, more than 100 employees, either force a vaccine or have testing done every week, remember, this isn't going to be the governors suing. They're all talking big. Oh, we're going to sue them. They're going to sue them, but it's going to be the employers who are really going to have the lawsuits here. Joining me now is Baruch Fellner, occupational safety attorney at Gibson Dunn. He came on my Sirius XM radio show and really opened my eyes to the legal issues, and so we have asked him to join us here. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. So this is the major point I took away from our last conversation. When OSHA has been challenged by an employer, you tell me that they have consistently or usually lost, correct?
That is absolutely correct. There have been a number of contests that employers have filed, and unions have also challenged OSHA's decision not to issue emergency temporary standards, and almost all of those challenges have failed. And Dan, you and I agree entirely. This is a legal issue because you got to trace the issue right back to the language of the statute. And the language of the statute makes this much too far a reach that OSHA is attempting to do.
So to be clear, and I think that a lot of people are going to say, well, you know, my friend told me that there was this Supreme Court case back in the early 1900s that makes it clear that this is okay. We need to distinguish here. That is regarding a state's power to, for example, mandate vaccines. What you're talking about and where your expertise is specifically in the tool that the federal government is trying to use here, correct?
That is absolutely correct. And that tool is an emergency temporary standard, which did not exist in the early 1900s, since OSHA itself did not exist until 1971. So accordingly, we have to look at the language of the emergency temporary standard. And clearly that envisions the rare instance in which OSHA can move by fiat. There is no hearing, there is no notice, there is no comment. OSHA simply goes to the Federal Register and issues an emergency temporary standard for a period of 6 months. That is a very, very Sisyphusian activity, to use a very long word. It's an impossible task that OSHA is undertaking in this instance.
So you are telling us that you think that in the end, the Biden administration will lose in court in its ability to use OSHA to enforce this. So do you think that they're just buying time here, knowing that it's going to take a while to work its way through the courts?
I think it's even a little bit more Machiavellian than that, Dan. I think OSHA and the administration does not seriously care whether they win or lose. The situation with respect to protection of the public, and this is a public health issue, not an employee health issue alone. The situation is a moving target, constantly changing. When we reach herd protection, when or if we reach it, when the booster shots kick in, there are a variety of different situations which will have an impact on the protection of both employees and the public as a whole. In the meantime, however, when OSHA promulgates this emergency temporary standard without giving anyone an opportunity to comment on some of the difficulties, and I hope you and I have some time to deal with those difficulties, which could benefit from notice and comment. In the meantime, for a period of 6 months, unless a temporary restraining order or injunction is issued, OSHA has this standard in place and can enforce it.
Yep.
If at the end of that period of time it wins, then it can make it a permanent standard. If at the end of that period of time it loses, man, they've tried their best.
Right, and here's what we're going to do. So, because I gotta say thank you to you, because I've got to talk to Megyn Kelly on the other side of this. But I want to tell you that this is going to come up again when we finally get the text of the OSHA order, and I would love for you to come back and take us through some of the specifics. We'll take a little more time and we'll dig in at that point. Baruch Fellner, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Dan.
You've heard my take on whether the vaccine mandate will stand up to legal challenges. Now we'll hear what Megyn Kelly has to say about it when she joins us live up next. Welcome back. Joining me now is an old friend and a fellow attorney, fellow Sirius XM radio host, fellow questioner of media orthodoxies, Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show, which airs at noon on the Triumph channel at Sirius XM. Megyn, great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me, and congrats on the launch.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, as with every conversation we have, some things we agree on, some things we disagree on. So we're going to take on both. I want to dive right in and start with a topic I just tackled in the previous segment, and that is the legality of the vaccine mandate. We just heard from an expert on OSHA law. Despite almost all of our fellow legal analysts assuring us the mandate will sail through the courts, he doesn't think so. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I agree with him. I thought he had a very sound analysis of it. I don't think, Congress can't delegate a power that it doesn't have. And I don't think Congress actually has the Commerce Clause power to issue a mandatory vaccine at this level. I mean, public safety is generally a state power, not a federal government power. And if the Supreme Court didn't uphold the ability to force an individual mandate under the Obamacare, they didn't uphold that under the Commerce Clause. They upheld that as a tax. I don't think they're going to uphold this power under the Commerce Clause. So Congress can't delegate a power to OSHA that it doesn't have. And then the next layer down is, even if it does have the power to delegate to OSHA, best case scenario for Biden administration, the first answer goes its way. It has to be, in order to avoid this lengthy period in which the public gets to comment and object on the proposed rule that would require them to get these vaccines and so on. In order to get rid of that, dispense with it, and do it on a super fast basis, they've got to reach an urgency standard, an emergency standard that they didn't reach here. I mean, the Delta had been around for a while, COVID had been around for a long while, and I just don't think they're going to pass that very stringent test.
Well, I think that's sort of and I think that's, to me, the bigger point here is the OSHA emergency temporary standard as to what you have to overcome. And as my previous guest pointed out, the legal fight is going to be difficult for them. And so on that front, I definitely agree with you. Now, you are pro-vaccine. You've gotten vaccinated, but you are not a supporter of the mandates. You and I have talked about this before. The thing I just still don't understand is if you oppose the mandates and the vaccines, okay, but why is this vaccine making people so crazy? Why is it viewed as so different from all the other vaccines out there? People are required to take. Over 1 billion people at this point have taken this vaccine. That's a big sample size. Pfizer has full FDA approval at this point. I don't really get the fury over this.
Well, I can give you a couple of answers. I mean, I'll give you what I understand when it comes to adult vaccines, right? Those did not persuade me. I got the vaccine, so did my husband. And then we can talk about child vaccines, which is the thing I'm really opposed to the mandates on. I don't like the mandates at all, but I personally understand the hesitancy when it comes to the children. So I think in general, we're in a public health crisis in many ways. And I think the deterioration in trust in the media, in public health, in Fauci telling us one thing only for us to find out weeks or months later that it was 100% untrue, an actual lie. He might argue a noble lie. I think a lot of the public disagrees, leads bit by bit to an erosion of trust. And then when that same man turns around and says, I mandate, right? I insist that you inject yourself with this vaccine, which is new, which is relatively untested. If you look at the history of other vaccines that have been around a lot longer, they're feeling hinky about it. They don't trust him. And then they don't trust the media that's responsible for telling us whether it's safe or not. And then they get conspiratorial and they go down deep rabbit holes online, on Reddit, on whatever, YouTube, when you name it. And they go to other sources of information. That's a lot. That's how a lot of people wound up storming the Capitol on January 6th, too, for that matter.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that it's misinformation, right? That's leading people down these dark rabbit holes, making
earlier
them so
misinformation.
Well, but see, I think there's a different issue, right? I agree with you that when Fauci said at the outset about you don't need a mask, and that was a lie, meaning his position was you did need a mask.
Numbers on herd immunity, right? We could go on and on.
Well, the only one that I think that Fauci did not tell the truth on, and it is clearly objectively untrue, was at the outset when he said that masks really won't make a difference. And the reason he later explained was that he was trying to protect and save the masks for healthcare workers.
All right, he thought he was our daddy. No, come on, he lied.
Let me ask you.
It's saying that they never funded gain of function research when we know that they funded Eco Health Alliance.
But that's not true. That's not true. Gain of function
is
one of these definitions that lawyers could debate for decades.
Lawyers could debate it till the cows come home, but the scientists say that's what he funded, and he denied it under oath.
No, that's not true. That's not what the scientists say.
It's 100% true.
A fringe group of scientists call it gain of function.
Absolutely not.
That's the reality. Look
you
at
can
the
call
definition.
them fringe to the cows come. I understand exactly what it is. And that same group that you're saying didn't perform gain of function research, we now know went to the Pentagon as well and specifically wanted to take coronaviruses from bats and do exactly to them what was done in this case, or what the virus wound up looking like. That grant was denied by the Pentagon, but they were already in the lab.
Gain of function
the
has
so-called bat ladies performing the experiments.
Gain of function has a very specific definition. It's available. If you look it up on the NIH, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to our audience. To the audience, you can look it up on the NIH website. There's a specific definition, and it means not just that you're manipulating a virus. It means that you're actually gaining the function of it. It means you're changing it, and you're making it more transmissible. There is no evidence that that the United States paid for any research on gain of function after there was a pause in 2014 on that kind of research. I mean, that's just
Peter Daszak's group, Eco Health Alliance, sought and received funding from it. Right. And they went over there and performed what many, not just fringe, Dan, I think it was over, it's at least scores, it's at least over 40 scientists came out right after Fauci's testimony and said this is absolutely gain of function research that he was doing from both sides. It's not some crazy, the disinformation doesn't. These are respected medical doctors and virologists and physicists who have taken a look at what what he's done. Peter Daszak is the guy who was embarrassed on 60 Minutes as having clearly lied and worked with the Chinese as opposed to the World Health Organization to say that this didn't come from a lab. And his report, this is the guy who runs EcoHealth Alliance, was so dishonest. Even the World Health Organization had to disown him. There's a movement to push him out of his job, which is taxpayer funded. This guy cannot be trusted. He's the one who got the money. And I'm telling you, the scientists are credible.
But again, whether he got the money, this $400,000 to do a particular type of research, doesn't change the reality that everyone's trying to use this to suggest Dr. Anthony Fauci's lying to us about everything. Dr. Anthony Fauci's horrible. You can disagree with him and not think that the guy's out trying to kill us. I mean, that's the impression that you give sometimes.
I think he's not an honest broker.
You really do.
I don't think he's an honest broker. He's not an honest broker. Why doesn't he account for natural immunity when he's trying to shove the vaccines down our throats?
Why do you think he's lying? Is he lying because he wants us all to die?
Well, he admitted his first lie was because he thought it was going to protect the healthcare workers and their masks.
I agree with you on that one.
That's the so-called noble lie. Unacceptable. That's not okay. He's not our daddy.
I agree.
Right?
Unacceptable.
So
agree.
That was the first. But we could go down the list, and the most recent was the failure to explain, not a lie. But he was asked by Sanjay Gupta on CNN, to Sanjay's credit, why don't you make any account for natural immunity? The study out of Israel shows it's 27 times more effective at preventing COVID than getting a vaccine. And Fauci's response was, that's a very good question. I don't know. So either he hasn't done his homework before he's backing these mandatory vaccines, or he does know, which is the much more likely answer, and he just doesn't want to be straight with us.
But again, why doesn't he want to be straight? What's his motivation? I don't even get it. Why does he want us to all, what, he wants us to be sick, or he wants us to
get the vaccine?
Get poked in the arm just because? I mean, what's his motivation?
You tell me, Dan, if I understood Dr. Anthony Fauci and the way his brain works,
right? I'll tell you.
I'd have a lot.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what I think he is. I think he's an egghead. I think that he lost credibility at the outset with the comment about the masks. But I think since then, whether you would disagree with him or you agree with him, his head, his motivations are in the right place. You may say, I disagree with decisions he's made, but this anger, Dr. Fauci, he's the worst.
I don't know that you're right.
He's the devil. It's like, no, you may disagree with him, but you know what?
Okay. I never said he was the devil, but I don't think he's a truth teller or an honest broker
I know you did.
at all. And I actually think there is a case to be made that he's willfully misleading us, because if he, in fact, was as tight with Daszak as his emails and the evidence appears to show, go read Josh Rogan's book of the Washington Post. And if he is that dishonest and he funded that research that actually somehow was connected to the launch of this virus, he's got a lot to cover up. And we should not be trusting him, and he should not be in a position of authority.
All right, more with Megyn Kelly. Coming up after a quick break. Right back. We are back with Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show on the Triumph Channel on Sirius XM. Megyn, before we talk more broadly about media bias, I want to ask you something about January 6th. On your show on July 12th, you said of the attack, there's no question the media represented it as so much worse than it actually was. You also said there were some losers who were responsible, et cetera. The media did what it does. Why do you say that you think that the media represented it as much worse than it was? It seemed pretty bad.
It did seem pretty bad. And I've never said other than that. I've condemned what happened on January 6th over and over and over. But unlike most people who report on this, I understand nuance. And I understand that to take a tragedy like that day and what happened on Capitol Hill that day and have the nerve to compare it to 9/11 is disgusting hyperbole. And it has to stop. It has to stop. On 9/11, which you and I both lived through, unlike a lot of these twerp reporters who are just pulling out their pens and trying to write about this for the first time, nearly 3,000 Americans were killed. Over 400 first responders were killed. Over 8 children, including a 2-year-old on his way to Disney, were killed on her way to Disney. Instead of winding up in Disney, she wound up in the South Tower and burned to death. 200 people jumped or were forced out of the windows of those towers because of the flames and the overwhelming heat that they begged their relatives to forgive them for fleeing because they had no choice but to jump or be burned alive. Don't tell me January 6th even compares in any way, shape, or form to not.
Who compared it to 9/11?
Let me go down the list. Joy Reid, Stephen Schmidt, Matthew. I forget his name. Matthew Cooper. What's his name? Matthew Dowd. Thank you. Huffington
Okay.
Post, Washington, White House correspondent.
All right.
I could keep going.
No, look, I would agree with you that it's not comparable. That if people comparing it to 9/11, I think is a problem. But it was.
I could go on.
Worry.
That's not my only example, but
I
that's a bad
believe
one.
you. I believe you, but I do think that there is this effort now by some to try to minimize it. The flip side of that, to suggest it was just some travelers who were hanging out, just having a good time for the day. And I think that does a great disservice to the Capitol Police officers who were there, who were injured, who were attacked. And it makes me crazy that on the one hand, you have people on the left suddenly saying, oh, the police are great, just the Capitol Police. And yet people on the right saying, oh, yeah, I love the police, but not the Capitol Police. I mean, particularly, I have to say, the folks on the right who are distancing themselves from these brave officers really bothers me.
I understand, and I agree with you on that. And I'll make no defense of anybody who lays hands on a cop in the way we saw on that day.
Yeah.
I think I'll say as a lawyer, I thought strategically it wasn't a good call to have the cops get political when they testified on Capitol Hill. And I think that alienated some people who otherwise would have been completely in their corner. And some of these guys had been very political and opposed to Trump and had been calling him a racist and a terrible guy and blah, 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 before they took to the stand. That doesn't mean we shouldn't listen to them. That doesn't mean they didn't suffer real trauma. I'm just saying as a media member, I could see how it started to go off the rails with some people on the right.
Except that we see most of the time, police tend to be a bit right of center. And we see, public statements against, and the notion that somehow that would make people say, oh, we shouldn't respect the cops who were attacked that day.
You respect the
to
cops.
me is, So let me ask you
them and
just
you
a
respect
quick.
their service that day. They were placed in a position they never should have been in.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. Media bias question for you. 13 years at Fox News. What do the critics have right and wrong about Fox News?
I mean, they're right that it's right-leaning, right? That it's more conservative in its approach to the news. It's closer to the Wall Street Journal than it is to the New York Times. More so, I would say today than before, than I felt when I was there. I thought it was a little bit more diverse ideologically when I was there, when I was in the prime time, when Greta, it was like Greta, Shep, me, O'Reilly, Hannity. That was a pretty good mix of Bill was a populist. I was an independent. I don't know what Greta was. Sean's a conservative and Shep, I think, is a Democrat. Anyway, but I think one thing that people don't understand about Fox News is how important it is to the national conversation. Its haters should understand the conservatives need at least one. It's on television. They really don't have much. Yes, there's OWN. They get almost nobody watching them, right? Newsmax is making a run for it. We'll see.
You're not actually comparing OWN to Fox, though, are you? I mean, I think that's a real insult to Fox.
No, I'm trying to say now there are at least a couple of other wannabes out there, right, on television. But Fox is really all there is. If there's Fox and then there's basically all the rest of the mainstream media. And conservatives, right-leaning independents deserve at least one. It's important to the country that they have at least one.
And if you were forced to watch CNN or MSNBC, which one do you go with?
Oh, God. Don't I have, can I just run for it? Do I have to?
No,
can I listen to Muzak? I might spend some time with Jake Tapper or Smirkanish on CNN if I had to watch one.
Megyn Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show. Always great to talk to you. And again, the Megyn Kelly Show is on the Triumph channel on Sirius XM. Hope to see you soon. Coming up. That deputy is okay after being ambushed and shot by a guy already wanted for murder. And here is the living proof. Deputy Mike Hutton is with us along with his sheriff live coming up next. Welcome back. It is time for our police cam segment showing the dangers law enforcement officers face on the job every day. Tonight, we are getting a look at what happened when a deputy in Colorado investigated someone stealing from semi-trucks.
Is this your truck or?
This is my truck.
Okay.
Someone else's.
I didn't see your doors open when I came down here.
No, because he already shut them.
All right.
Someone did, because they took the seal off. The seal's off, that means someone...
Of yours?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't talk to this driver at all, did you?
No.
The suspect, Tristan Ensinger, was hiding just inside the door of the trailer. He shot Lincoln County Deputy Michael Hutton 3 times in his hand, arm, and chest. Deputy Hutton suffered a pierced lung. It was difficult for Deputy Hutton to speak, but he was able to radio for backup.
Everybody's huge caution. Again, I'm down. And I'm losing blood pretty quick. I got shot about 3 times. I'll be right.
I've got air light heading your way, sir. You've got backup coming. Hang in there.
Where are you hit? Do you know where you're hit?
I feel bad on this side.
Okay. All right. Okay. Dude, you're not bleeding in your torso. You're okay. You're okay. Give me some shears.
We got you, brother.
We're right here, big dog.
Multiple departments came together to search for Ensinger, who was wanted for murder. He was found dead hours later after taking his own life. Meanwhile, Deputy Hutton has recovered and has returned to the job. And I'm very proud to say that he joins us now live, along with Lincoln County Sheriff Tom Nestor. Thank you both very much for being here. Deputy Hutton, it is great to see you doing so well. Take us through, if you can, the moment that you were ambushed there. What do you actually remember about it?
Well, thank you for having us, first of all, and it's great to be seen, to say the least. Obviously, he caught me by surprise. When I saw the shadowy figure leaning out of that truck within milliseconds of time to think, if you will, I knew I was going to get shot. And I had no time to react. And he got 3 shots in me, took a total of 9 rounds that just kind of bounced all around me. You could hear him whistling by me. One went straight through my thumb, another through my forearm here, and then one through the soft part of your body armor just underneath your armpit, through my lung, and got stuck near my back, about 1 inch from my back. Scared, to say the least, and very quickly felt as though I was certainly going to die.
But you remember the moment? You remember sort of seeing the shots coming at you, and that's when you say you had that sense that you were going to die?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, I have a very short window to react, as you see in the video, but enough to know, hey, that's a gun, and I'm hit and I'm down. I actually hit the ground, and I had to get back on my feet pretty quick.
Deputy Hutton, your fellow deputies came to help. I want to listen to that part again.
I've got air light heading your way, sir. You've got backup coming. Hang in there.
Where are you hit? Do you know where you're hit?
I feel bad on this side.
Okay. All right. Okay. Dude, you're not bleeding in your torso. You're okay. You're okay. Give me some shears.
We got you, brother.
We're right here, big dog.
So tell me about how they were able to get you to the hospital. Do you remember that part?
Yes, sir. So it took a little while to find me. I was pretty far separated from my vehicle, and it was really foggy that morning. I can't even put into words with how foggy it was. You almost couldn't see in front of yourself. So I couldn't speak over the radio because my lung had been pierced and I was no longer able to really talk very well. So I actually ended up putting my pistol next to the right side of my head and firing 1 round into the ground, just for guys to be able to at least follow that sound and find me.
Wow. Sheriff Nestor, you called it a dark day for the department. Tell me what you were thinking when you heard that Deputy Hutton had been shot.
That was probably one of the top worst phone calls I've received in my 33-year career. To hear one of your own guys out here has been gunned down is a horrible thing. And then to leave my house and see how foggy it is, and it delays finding him. It took us 21 minutes to find him, and Deputy Hutton saved his own life because we couldn't find him. We didn't have GPS on our officers, and he thought out of the box enough to fire a round, and I heard it to the left of me, and we managed to get turned around and find him. Thank God he was still with us.
Deputy Hutton, how did you know that they wouldn't be able to find you? I mean, this is part of the story that I actually didn't even realize until this second, about you literally firing the weapon to get other people's attention. How did you know that they were going to have a hard time finding you?
You know, obviously it's dark, the heavy fog, and they're searching around my vehicle, which is common sense. That's more than likely where I would have been, but they didn't know that I actually had ran across the other side of the highway. Without me being able to talk and communicate clearly where I was, you know, I knew I had no more than a few minutes to get help, or I wasn't going to make it. So it was a last ditch effort to just try to get somebody to at least hear where I was.
All right. Let me take a quick break here, because I do want to ask you about the recovery process as well, that I know has been ongoing. Let's take a break. We will come right back. This is the moment before Deputy Mike Hutton was shot, right there. See it there? He was looking for someone who'd been robbing some trucks, and hiding behind that door was a man with a weapon who ended up shooting himself. Turns out he was also wanted for murder. Deputy Mike Hutton survived, and he joins us again with Lincoln County Sheriff Nestor. Thank you both again for being back with us. So let me ask you about the healing process, Deputy Hutton. I mean, you lost 60 to 80% of your blood. How long did the healing process take? And can you show us, by the way, you mentioned it was on your thumb that one of the shots hit. You know, I think that sort of makes, man, look at that hospital shot of you. Anyway, talk to us about the recovery. Talk to us about your injuries. Tell us how you're doing.
Yes, sir. So I'm still recovering. I still have to go to physical therapy 2 to 3 times a week, just working on scar tissue and getting lung power back and things like that. I don't know how well you can see it here, but my left thumb here, I mean, the bullet went straight through, and my thumb is now just stuck as you see it. I can't really move it at all. One round also went through my forearm completely through. And then, as I said earlier, through my torso into my lung. Recovery process has been fun, we'll call it. It's been an interesting journey, a little bit of pain here and there, but I can't complain too much. I'm doing much better.
Sheriff, I've got to believe that Deputy Hutton is now serving as a role model for other people in the department on how to deal with adversity at its worst.
He's definitely a fighter, and we follow his lead. We're all getting fit. Believe it or not, I've lost 50 pounds, and I think that is what helped him get going fast, get away from the shooting. And he's leading. We've got more officers on the department now, and he's a heck of a role model. He's going to be around for a long time.
Deputy Hutton, any fear now on your part that you didn't have before when you're on patrol?
To be perfectly honest, no. I've been doing this for 13 years and have made peace with the reality that it's something that can happen. I've said it before, and I'll say it again here with you, that if anybody in the community, any person is going to get shot or take a bullet, I'd much rather it be me. I might be a little bit more cautious going forward, but no changes.
Wow. Well, Deputy Hutton, I got to just tell you, it is a real honor to have you on the program. I think your story will inspire many. I think people are going to watch the way you are dealing with this now and say, I wish I could be that strong. And I know that I think that. Deputy Hutton, I honor you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Sheriff Nestor, thank you so much for coming on the program, for allowing us to talk to Deputy Hutton. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Live PD in the future?
I'm hoping. Believe me.
Or live
you know,
one of the two.
Exactly. You guys thought you were coming to do a live PD interview. You're like, wait a sec. Wait, what happened here? We're doing Dan Abrams live? What happened to live PD? No, I'm continuing the good. I'm continuing the good fight to bring it back. I promise.
Perfect. We appreciate you, Dan.
Thank you guys very much. Coming up ahead in tonight's Mediaite Moments, when political attacks come back to haunt you. Tonight, I'm talking about Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham. Up next. The Gabby Petito case has helped bring attention to other missing persons cases around the country. Tonight, Marnie Hughes and NewsNation Prime dig into the puzzling disappearance of Kiera Coles. Marnie, tell us about it.
Dan, this case was a really big deal in Chicago 3 years ago, and her family wants it to be a big deal today nationwide. They don't want it to go cold. So Kiera Coles was 26 years old. She was pregnant. She was working in the city of Chicago as a postal worker on the South Side. 3 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. Kiera's car found a block away from her apartment. And here's what's interesting, Dan. Her cell phone, her packed lunch still inside her car. And after 3 years, there have been no leads in the case. Now a $25,000 reward is being offered by the U.S. Postal Service. Her parents, we're talking to both of them tonight. They have their theories about who may be involved, and we're going to get into that this evening. We're also hearing from the Chicago Police Department. They say this case is still a priority. There is the potential that some foul play was involved here. So tonight, Kiera Coles on Missing in America here on Prime, highlighting her case and some other cases of missing people of color.
Thank you, Marnie. We'll see you coming up tonight on NewsNation Prime.
Thanks, Dan.
Look forward to it. Time now for our Mediaite Moments, where we check in on the day's bias, buzz, and bull in the world of cable news and beyond. Political criticism of a sitting U.S. president is nothing new. In fact, for each cable news outlet, opposition to an administration in power has been a critical piece of their success. But not all criticism is equal, and sometimes it ends up blowing up in your face, even if you don't feel it at first. For example, in an effort to tout his vaccine policies, President Biden touted Fox News earlier this week.
Fox News. Fox News requires vaccinations for all employees. Give me a break. Fox News.
Of course, many Fox News hosts have been vocal opponents of vaccine mandates. And Tucker Carlson decided to fire back at Biden's comment.
Now, to be clear, we just have a show on this channel. That's it. We don't run the company, and we would never presume to speak for the company. But as a factual matter, what Joe Biden just said is completely untrue. It is a lie, period. We can say that with authority since we work here.
Tucker's actually right that Fox News doesn't require vaccines for all employees. Some can choose to remain unvaccinated and opt to instead get weekly COVID testing, which, by the way, is exactly the same policy as Biden's policy for the private sector. So how did Tucker describe Biden's vaccine policy in September?
So Joe Biden's order forcing 100 million Americans to take the COVID shot is totally insane as a matter of public health.
So judging by Tucker's own standards, Tucker is presenting the very same lie as Biden was. Moving over to later in Fox News primetime slate, Laura Ingraham made a similar point when she attacked Biden's vaccine distribution plan.
Biden's team not only inherited new vaccines, but an enormous supply of them at a time when many other countries didn't have any. So all Biden had to do was, number one, make the vaccines widely available. Number two, lift all restrictions on economic activity.
All right, so if Biden just needs to make them available, then vaccines are a critical component of stopping the pandemic, then people should all be taking them, right? Except that back in July, her focus was that it was just some experimental thing.
There's nothing more anti-democratic, anti-freedom than pushing an experimental drug on Americans against their will, threatening them.
Speaking of Biden bashing, former candidate Kim Klacik, who failed in her run for Maryland Congress, posted this image of empty shelves mocking Biden's Build Back Better slogan, complete with hashtag. Empty shelves in stores are a real issue in this country, which is why it's odd that when you look closely, you can see that the prices in that photo she posted are in British pounds. Yes, that was a photo of a store in Great Britain, which perhaps proves the point of being penny wise, but pound foolish. That's it for our wrap-up of the day's media bias, buzz, and bull, our Mediaite Moments. And for those of you who don't get to see every night, we do take turns in who we beat up on the Mediaite Moments segment. And sorry we didn't have more time. Now we had extra time with Megyn Kelly. Look, this is another 30 seconds that we could have had to continue the good debate. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Marnie Hughes is up next. Remember, that missing persons case we were just talking about, that's next. See you tomorrow night.